Tilke Platteel-Deur, thank you for joining me today for a deep dive into 5 decades of, I guess, your life as a breath worker. So what I'd like, maybe, Tilke, if you can take us back to the very beginning. What was happening in your life when breathwork first entered your awareness, and what drew you to explore it so deeply at that time?
It was a time that my marriage was kind of wobbly, rather very difficult. My husband was an airline pilot and he had a big epileptic fit on board his airplane, so that stopped his whole career. And it was a one-time thing. And so we had to move back from Germany, where he was working with Lufthansa, to Holland. And there we met people who had been in Findhorn, who had lived in Findhorn. And in Findhorn, they were doing rebirthing.
Which is in Scotland, right?
In Scotland, in the north of Scotland, it's a spiritual community where people were living already in those days, and they still do. It still exists.
I remember I met the founder's wife in India. I think it was in 1998. Neela, I'm sure you know her.
And we went there for a 10-day holiday or something with our children. I met people who were doing rebirthing. My impression was they have something that I lost, and I want to have that back. There was a quality of aliveness and of presence that was so appealing. And so when we came back home, I spoke with the woman who sent us there, and she said, there is a rebirther, a Dutch man who became American, who is in Holland in holidays. And so we called him up, and the same day, the whole family had our first sessions.
Fantastic.
I had a horrible session with loads of cramps and very much terror. And in the middle of all that, it was as if there was a thought falling into my head, which was, this is going to be your next career. And it felt like an order, and I couldn't do anything but obey. And I'm still at it.
I can relate to that. I know a lot of people that explore breath work, give it in the session, they kind of open their eyes and go, oh my God, I want to do this as a career. So to call it, right? So you studied classical ballet and modern dance early in your life. How did movement, your experience of Dance Academy, relate to your understanding of the breath? Because I guess it worked with professional dancers as well. And I know breathing is very important. What did you experience?
In the Martha Graham technique, it's the breath that ignites the movement. So the in-breath is taken to get in your energy, and on the out-breath, the movement starts. In that very first session that I finally really understood what they meant with stretches and contractions. I had done that for years in my training, that same exercise. Stretches and contractions. In my very first rebirthing session, it suddenly became so physically clear what it really meant. Taking energy in and bringing that energy on your out-breath inside yourself, and at the same time having the possibility to go into movement, into the world.
Did you then stop dancing in order to explore breathwork, or did you still dance?
No, I was already married. We were living in Germany. I had a friend who said to me, you have a profession, you have to work. And so I started to give dancing lessons again. And then when we came back to Holland after Henk had that epileptic fit, I organized a little course of 10 evenings for women. And after the 5th evening, I thought, this is not it anymore. I need to do something else. So I went to the bank, pulled out all the money that they had paid me. I bought 2 bottles of champagne and said to them, I'm stopping doing this course because I'm going to do something else, but I don't know exactly what.
Fair enough. So, Tilke, you trained with some of the pioneers of like the modern breathwork, I guess. Leonard Orr, is it Dhyana Yogi?
Dhyana Yogi. I have tried to Google him, but I couldn't find him. Leonard came, the first time that he came to us, he stayed for 3 weeks. It was very amazing, very interesting man, highly intelligent, socially very unpractical. I loved him dearly and I could laugh with him. He has a lot of humor. And what he did was he started to give me sessions and asking me for giving him sessions.
Amazing way to learn from the master himself.
An amazing way to learn, but the most important for me was that he always combined the fine-tuned breath. He was playing with your breath, with tempo and depth and length and always bringing you into that movement of bringing the energy up and bringing the energy really down inside, but also watching the quality of the thought. And Leonard actually covered in the way he taught what he always called the 5 biggies.
Mm-hmm.
So that was your birth trauma,
which was number 1.
Which is number 1, the parental disapproval.
Specific negatives.
All the negatives.
Mm-hmm.
Your personal lie, unconscious death earth, and past lives. What he later on came with school trauma, religious trauma, repression of feminine energy and repression of the masculine energy. And the way he taught was so clear. I think a lot of that clarity, when you look at today what they are doing in a training, or what people sometimes call a training, is very often not really diving in the depths of those issues, but traveling a little bit on the surface. And you can see it sometimes in our jigs when people are still having trouble relating to each other and fighting and bickering about childish stuff, actually. And it is because they did not clear their relationships.
Yeah, because he also did a lot of work around sibling rivalry as well, wasn't it? So what were those early trainings like? And what did each of those teachers contribute to your foundation? Because I know that breathwork has evolved. I mean, I know in the last 35 years of my exploration with it, it's evolved. And I'm sure you've seen a massive change in the field of breathwork, especially now that it's more mainstream. So what did they contribute to your foundations?
I think what I just described, the basic stuff, and that did not change. When we begin to understand really deeply, physically, but also mentally understand what the breath is doing physically, how it is used in a physical, really precise way, the psychological impact of connecting your breath consciously. It's not just connecting it, it's consciously connecting it. Knowing how to play with the depth and the tempo, to move yourself through the obstructing thoughts that are always there. If you teach people to really do that, you kind of get a breath conversation together, because the client is breathing and you correct his breathing and you guide the breath in a way that is steering into the breath that is the most natural and easy and full for him or her. And then each time when you encounter an obstructing thought and you move through that thought till it's melted down physically.
I like the way you say that, melted down, because I know in the past you've always described using like butter melting, and I like that analogy. So, you know, in the late 1970s and early 1980s, breathwork was still new and experiential. What was the breathwork world like then, and how does it compare to what it is today? Because you've seen it all.
I remember a guy who had a wonderful job. He had a family with 3 children. I was working with Henk in those days together, and we gave a training. That man was in those days, early 80s, earning like 120,000 a year, which was enormous for those days. He quit his job pure out of the enthusiasm about the breathwork. So there was a lot of riskiness in those days. I sometimes think we had those experiences, and I don't know if people still have them in the same way. The singing in the head, the seeing of, I could see energy. I can't any longer, but it is like little gold flakes in the air in a session. And sometimes I thought all those things happened so that our attention would be drawn in and we would become so fascinated by the work that we needed to explore it.
I can relate to that because I've had visual experiences, like you said, where it's like, it's almost like you can see energy. It's hard to explain it unless you experience it. So I totally get that. Tilke, over the 50 years of practice, how has your personal understanding of breathwork evolved? When I started with the breath, from my understanding, there wasn't as much science back then as there is today. And I'm really loving all the new science that's coming in. So there's obviously an evolution, and you've seen it for yourself. Are there core principles that have stayed constant for you? And have you let go of other concepts maybe in your understanding of breathwork?
I think when I look at it now, it seems too wide, too much, too many different kinds of corners where they dive into. sometimes it seems as if they are trying to invent a simple screw again.
Yeah, I see it too. People are trying to reinvent it and even claim that they invented it, which makes me laugh.
Yeah, reinvent the wheel. And I mean,
Yeah.
they already have a wheel and you
Yeah.
can put another spike on it, but it stays a wheel. The same, I think, is true for the basic, and that is what I'm missing, the basic understanding of conscious connected breathing. When we can teach people really to do that precisely and use it in a very precise way, that stays as conscious connected breath. It is so simple.
Correct. Yeah.
People think they have to put colors on it and little flowers and little whatever. But the basic thing is conscious, connected breathing.
I'm sure in the last decade, you've seen obviously more breath work coming into the mainstream, as I said earlier on, and there's more public awareness now. What's your thoughts about trauma style of breath work, where people kind of take people into catharsis and drama? And what's your take on that? Because I know for me, I just think it can re-traumatize and really hurt people. And I've seen, especially working with the IBF, International Breathwork Foundation, as an integrity committee officer, we kind of get a lot of complaints. And unfortunately, because breathwork isn't regulated, and I hope it does one day become regulated and more pure, but we're seeing a lot of this trauma, catharsis. So how do you feel about that?
I go back to the simplicity. If I know what conscious connected breathing does and can do, I am teaching people that they are safe with an emotion and that they are not going into the drama, because the drama will not integrate the trauma. If a man had dry eyes for 40 years and the first time in a session he cries, I'm very glad. But after half a minute of crying, I already will guide him softly to take his breathing underneath the tears so that the tears come out and he starts to feel instead of expressing, because there is a difference.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess that's the most important thing, is to integrate that feeling.
Exactly. The feeling can integrate in relaxation and not in action, because otherwise every person who is jogging, they all do connected breathing. It's not conscious. The moment that they breathe connectedly when they are jogging, the extra energy is transformed in movement. But we sit them down or we lay them down. That energy that is produced in the moment that we are consciously connecting our breath, and we are breathing a little bit faster than normal, and towards the end of the session it might become even slower and slower, but it's still connecting, and we start to move energy inside the physical body, encountering where we are blocked and have been blocking ourselves, how the thought patterns have been causing certain blockages in the body.
So you've studied with Hal and Sidra Stone an integrated voice dialogue, and you use that in your practice? How does this work support breath work or in sessions? First
of all, it gave me the first time that I heard Hal Stone speak, I was just sitting there like, oh yes, oh yes. It was as if I got an intellectual framework for all the amazing experiences that I had in breathwork. And then I started to use, and I introduced it in our training as an extra for people to have to use. And sometimes it's very precise work, but it sounds like it's verbal work, but it is really energy work.
Okay. I've never really explored it, but I'm really curious because I've got another colleague that in the US that does voice dialogue. It's very interesting. You've trained thousands of students across Germany, the Netherlands, France, and Spain, right? What qualities do you believe make someone truly suited to be a professional breath worker?
First of all, I think I have to correct now. I don't like to speak about thousands of students. I think there are so many people exaggerating in there, and I don't like it. I never counted them, but I have been training people for 40 years, and normally we had 14 people, 14, 20 in one group. So but never mind.
What qualities do you believe make someone suited to be a professional breath worker? Because I think that's important. What qualities?
There has to be a real curiosity in people. There has to be a quality of willingness to serve, and the willingness to serve in all kinds of circumstances. In the same time, being so clear about my own boundaries, where I am still able to work or where I am already too tired. So there is the integrity inside. And with the integrity, I mean, here I am and I have a certain knowledge and I have life experience. And I give my knowledge and my life experience as a service to someone else to support him or her to get more clarity about their own brilliance. So the work that I do has not to do with me. It's for them. They come to me for themselves. So the ethical part is enormously important. And what I think is getting less in these days, that is the quality of the training that is offered. Because when I learn something about conscious connected breathing, there is an element in there that you could teach me about it in maybe 10 days. And I could understand it all in my mind. It would be like reading a good book or 2 or 3 about it and then understanding it. But it would be like a cloud up here with no physical grounding. So we need a long-term training in order to bring the knowledge and the how into the body so that it becomes integrated in a personality. And that is not being done in a weekend or 2.
Yeah, totally agree with that. So you have led the IBF as president in the past, the International Breathwork Foundation, and I think from my understanding, you still now serve on the Global Professional Breathwork Alliance board, and also you and I both are on the International Breathwork Foundation professionalism team. What have you learned about standards, ethics, and professional development in the breathwork community through these leadership roles?
What I really appreciate about that I think it was about 2000 or 2001 when we started to gather the information of many breathwork schools around the world to go into the GPBA organization. And that actually came out of the IBF. And Jim Morningstar and Jessica Deep were the main driving forces in there. Those were people who had already a high integrity and a high ethical standard. And so it was normal that we developed ourselves having the ethical standards, professional standards in mind while organizing this new organization or setting it up. And what we have is, I think we all made mistakes, also on the ethical level. I remember when I started to work, and one of the women, must have been 1980 or so. It's long ago. We spoke about ethical behavior in sessions. And I remember that she once said to me, but of course I slept with all my therapists.
Wow.
Of course I did.
What?
She felt quite proud about it. She was the one who later on started to relearn also herself, but also her students, because she was a fantastic trainer in the end. That we didn't understand in those days was that the moment that we start to work with someone, we work with a part in him or her that is a child. Actually, all the trauma that has happened in our lives has happened in the first 1 to 6, 7 years, and then we are kind of finished. Everything else is a repetition of the old trauma. Mm-hmm. So when I'm now listening to something in the news in my television, which happened like a month ago, and suddenly I was cooking and I heard in my television old propeller bombers. And I have been in the war. My house was bombed. And so I heard the noise and I was standing in the kitchen and I felt my whole body kind of
tense up.
Yeah. And so that was not me standing there. That was the child, 4.5 years old, or maybe 5, in the night that the bombs were falling. And you could hear them. That noise is very special.
Yeah, I don't want to imagine that.
No, don't. I don't hope that we have to have that again. And it's getting closer.
I can relate to that because I've been in 3 earthquakes, and the last one that I was in was so traumatic for me that I think for a year after, if a truck came by and rumbled, I would all of a sudden jump out of my skin because I get that.
Yeah.
And one time it was when I was a child, so it does bring back those memories. Over the decades as a breath worker, what patterns or core wounds have you seen most often in your clients? Like there's always like some core wounds that people come to you. I know for myself, when I work with people, I think the big ones are health, relationships, and career. And then, of course, some people go to full-on trauma from their early childhood. But what patterns have you kind of seen, and how does breathwork support in healing?
When I'm looking really good, there's one big thing. I'm not good. I'm not enough.
Yeah, I hear that as well, actually. Even today, I had a client this morning.
Underneath relationship patterns, that's the one. I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy that I can get that. I'm not good enough to have that. I feel guilt and I feel shame. Actually, in the last 9 months of this year, I have been going through a whole new kind of process, but then on such a deep level that my keynote for Greece will be about that.
I think I remember us having a discussion about this. And even though I know for myself, even though we can do a lot of work around some of these personal lies that we have or these negative thoughts, as much work as we do, every now and then they can come back, right? So, and when they come back, okay, it's time for some more love and some more awareness and some more healing, and just to change, I guess, some of these thoughts and negative feelings that we have.
You know, John, there is something very interesting happening. If we have a period where you go through a period where you feel I'm in my flow. I'm feeling good. My head is clear. I get a lot of smiles around me. I'm radiating good stuff because what I'm getting back is good. And then suddenly something happens. Someone says something. There is a look that reminds you, and suddenly you are triggered again. And then there is this in my case, this little girl. She goes like, oh. And there's always fear, sometimes anger, and a lot of old grief.
I get that as well. And then I just go, oh my God, it's back again. And then I go, oh, an opportunity to do some more healing.
Life is very good and offering us those opportunities.
Yes, absolutely. So you've written extensively, and I love this work that you do about hot water and cold water breath work. And I actually had a cold water breath work yesterday, which was amazing. And of course, for the people that don't know, we're not talking about Wim Hof technique or other sort of cold immersion. We're talking about the original cold water rebirthing technique with slow immersion. So hot and cold, what role do these methods play integrative healing? And what's some of the most profound observations that you've seen in the water breathwork processes?
In the hot water, especially when the people had to come out of the water, that moment of leaving the warmth and the coziness and the being held, rising out of the water and having to step out, there was the moment this birth stuff became visible. The place where we always did our hot tub, we had to go like about 10 meters from the hot tub back into the area where the mattress is lying, and to have the people finish their sessions in there. And that whole 10 meters, there were people who were born very quickly, and they would go and out of the water and they would march. And there were other people that didn't want to come out, and they were slowly, and you had to really nearly carry them, and they needed the slowliness to come to that resting period. There was all kinds of stuff happening in there.
So I guess for people that don't know what hot water breathwork is, I guess it's one of the original rebirthing processes where people were immersed in warm water. I know that Bo Volstrom always told me that the water should not be more than 38 degrees Celsius. Yep. Otherwise your brain can fry. That's really important if people are choosing to do hot water breathwork. But the hot water breathwork specifically was to heal any birth trauma, the transition from the womb to the atmosphere. So I get what you're saying. I know for me too, it's usually when I start to come out of the hot tub, for example, and that's where I get such like bang, bang, bang insights. Yeah. It's pretty powerful, and it's such a beautiful nurturing process as well. So cold water. Yeah. What do you see there? What's the observations in cold water? What themes come up for people? I know fear is a big one. Obviously.
Fear is a big one. Physical boundaries. I remember in myself, I had a horrible car accident and I had 2 children being born when I was slowly moving into the cold water. When the cold water was touching the scars in my body, there was like... And so the way you do it is more like a meditation, and you do it yourself. No one is guiding you. You do this by yourself. And it's very much for me about understanding when I have a physical memory and a memory maybe in my head as well, and I can breathe through that and stay with the temperature of the cold water. till I feel comfortable again, it's my mind over my matter.
Yeah, I noticed that yesterday too. It was quite interesting because I know that I was with another breath worker who was holding space for me for safety.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think I got up to, I was probably, for being a male, of course, when you get to the groin part, it's like, oh my God, it's intense. And then slowly, I think I got up to about my chest, but I was kind of stuck there for a while because cold water for me, and I know from reading your work, it's all about integrity. It's not about getting into your ego and going, oh, look at me, I've immersed to this depth.
Yeah.
Really, if you get cold, you come back out, etc.
Yeah.
I know I got to a point where it's almost like I didn't realize that I was kind of stuck there and sitting there for a while. And then my colleague said to me, what are you scared of feeling, or what are you scared of letting go? And then this thought just came up right there and then I became aware how tense my shoulders were. Then I kind of breathed and then relaxed again. And then I had this thought because I turned around and I looked at the beautiful garden, and it was like, it's a summer day. And then I had this thought, now, if I was in the ocean, I'd be floating on my back, because I looked at my colleague and she'd already immersed into the point where she was floating and just sighing in pleasure. And then I started to laugh and I thought, what am I doing? What am I holding on to? And then I had such big, profound realizations, old stuff that came up, and my body just was vibrating and I felt so alive. I always find cold water breathwork is so physical for me and really healing. And I had another one about 2 months ago, and it was more winter then. And again, my dear colleague and friend Maggie rang me up and said, oh, let's have a water session. A cold water session. And this time I was like, oh my God. And again, Tilke, it is exactly what I needed. It really helped me shift a lot of stuff that I was not even aware of.
Isn't it amazing? Both the hot water and the cold water, they can bring up stuff in your physical body that has some mental underlying pattern. Absolutely. That suddenly can burst open and you feel the integration happening and everything in yourself becomes joy.
Love it. And so I've been doing a lot of monthly water sessions, but now my new favorite is the cold water, which I'm exploring. So your book, The Art of Integrative Therapy, has influenced many therapists and practitioners. What compelled you to write it? What do you want your readers to take?
My children grew up with breath. My daughter took our whole training, and after she had done the basic 3 years, she would come back every year for a week in the summer, or for the hot water training in the wintertime. And both said to me, you have to write. I said, everything is already said, so what could I add? And they said to me, your way of working, of having a breath conversation with people, is so different of what we hear and read. And then Joy Money, who wrote a couple of books, she got me to write a first article in The Healing Breath, her magazine that she made in the internet. From there, I started to write, and it was more as if I had conversations with my students. The chapters in the book are really the conversations that I would have with my students about a certain object, about a certain issue.
I love your writings, and I really enjoy all the articles that you've written. And I know you're compiling a new book, right? From all of that. Fantastic.
Because over the years, I have given about 9 keynotes. And so they will all be in there. And the last one, I'm writing on it. And when that one is written, then it can go into the book, and then the book can be published. And then afterwards, I will give the keynote, because I always talk about what I've been writing.
Yeah, I look forward to Greece next year. We'll say 50 years in this field, Tilke. What do you believe is the soul or essence of breathwork? What is the part that must never be lost as the modality evolves? What should we not lose?
The moment that we remember to consciously connect our breathing in a difficult situation, we are safe with whatever we feel emotionally. I have some experiences where that also was true with physical pain, but I didn't master that part yet.
Not yet. Okay. So looking ahead into the future, what guidance would you give to the next generation of practitioners, trainers and leaders who carry breathwork forward into the future? You're an elder in breathwork, and I love your wisdom and your experience. What's the guidance? And
we are working with other people, but the main thing is we're working with ourselves.
What do you mean by that?
For every person who wants to do therapeutical work, breathwork, with another, they have to keep evolving themselves. It's frozen. The moment that I work with someone, it's my forever obligation that I keep looking inside and evolving myself. The hard lesson in this work is that developing your own safety and your own personality and your own holiness does never stop. And you can think, I mastered that little piece. But that little piece will come back in 2 years and you have to master it again on another level. So there is this ongoing learning that we have to, it's an oath.
For me, it's important as a breathwork practitioner to keep doing sessions for myself because it really does connect me with the work. Next week, anyway, I'm having a breathwork session with one of my students. And I love that, that I get to experience breathwork from different people holding space, different, whether it's a male or a female energy, even group sessions. Sometimes I jump into group sessions as well. What else I can ask you right now?
Something that pops now into my mind. You know that I do a lot of working sitting up.
Oh, yeah. Yes, you do. Just flashing back to the conferences, yeah.
Actually, that came into existence because I was not so comfortable any longer when I was about 60 to sit on the floor looking at someone lying down on a mat. I always already had, for that reason, a couch in my office. But then I started to work sitting up. And I discovered that for a lot of people who are coming in, when there is a man coming in those days, in the 80s, 90s, and a man came in and he was a mayor of one of the biggest cities of Holland. And he had heard about breathwork. He would come in and he would wear a jacket and a vest underneath. And he had a watch not on his wrist, but here in the pocket of his whatever. And he would take off his jacket. In those days, he was still lying down on the floor. But sometimes I started to sit him up. And the man, he didn't talk a lot, but he would come back after his session and he would tell me stuff like, my leading a conversation in the community, in the town hall, was so much easier after last week. And then I began again to understand the importance of being grounded and being in a normal position, like you are sitting up, like we are in normal life. Because people have also to function in normal life.
That's another question I want to ask you too. How long do you keep your clients breathing for in a session?
It is towards the end, it's most of the time like 20 minutes, like in a row. But there will be, when the session starts out, and my sessions hardly take longer than 1.5 hours. In the past, they would be more often 2 hours, and they get shorter because I'm much more precise. And there is only a certain amount of stuff that people can integrate in one time, I think. So I sit down, we speak, and I ask someone to start breathing into what they have just been telling me, feeling where that is in their body, what they are speaking about. And then I go from there. Like I said, it is like I'm moving with the breath from one obstructing thought toward freeing it and moving on. And then there comes a point where the breath is breathing itself. That is 2 words. And that is so beautiful because then you see them, you see that happening. And there is another part in the sitting up for me that is so important, because when people start to really connect with their upper parts and here above them, when the inhale is really reaching out in heaven and opening that upper gate and then like asking, please throw it in, lieber, my dear God, what I need, what the energy, the air goes out of the nose, but the energy stays in. And in the beginning, they can often just come to here. Then you can see it moving down. And for me, it has become very important that people get into a conscious feeling of what their sexual energy feels like, but that is a feeling that is pleasant inside the body, that it belongs in the body, but it is also the area in the body where our safety lies. And those two have to be combined, the joy and the safety.
Yes, beautiful.
And I have worked with so many women, but also with men who have been abused, also sexually. Therefore, their basic safety has been hurt. When they begin to experience that life force feels so good and so juicy, and that is connected to safety. And that helps to bring up their self-esteem, because it is so personal and it is so inside themselves, and it is something inside themselves where they can feel that it is their right, who am I going to let in there? Whom am I going to share my body with? And then we are back into the ethical stuff around the work. Because when I am sitting here and I'm supervising or guiding a session and I'm not in contact with my own physical energy and I'm not comfortable with it, I get needy. And that is the moment where the ethical boundaries are being transgressed.
And that's why it's important to have clear boundaries and ethics and standards that we practice in our work now.
But it is not something about it. That is not something that we need to understand. We need to understand it as well, but we need to know it inside, in the physical.
Yeah.
And that takes time.
Okay. How are you feeling?
I'm good. I could have my second cup of coffee of today.
I've already had 3 today.
I do only 1 in the morning, and now I'm looking at my coffee cup that's still standing on the table, and I think, because for me, it's now 11:15 in the morning.
Me, it's nearly 10 to 9 at night. One more question. When you want to explain to someone what is breathwork, what is it? How do you explain it in a nutshell? We all have our own ways of explaining it. Conscious connected breathing, blah, blah, blah. What's Tilke's explanation to someone that has no idea what breathwork is? Someone says, what do you do for work? And you say, I'm a breathworker. And then people kind of go, huh? So
no, I'm always saying I'm a breathwork therapist. And then they say, is that for my health? And I said, oh, yes, it's also very good for your health. But you are going to get very happy with me when you start to know about your own breathing and you start to use it in moments that you are not feeling so well, that you get a little afraid or that you get upset. And you can use your breath. You can bring yourself back into a state of balance.
Awesome. So Tilke, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge.
Thank you so much.
I always love learning from you.
Have I been coherent in any way?
Yes, you have. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to when I see you again in Greece next year, or maybe earlier. You don't know. I might visit.
If you visit Holland, I would be maybe even angry. If you don't visit me.
I would visit you for sure. I know you've invited me to come and stay.
Yeah.
So thank you again, Tilke. I really appreciate your time.